Seems to be a never-ending task of sorting through rubble and destruction. There are signs of lives being rebuilt. Manu Dhingra, a severely burned World Trade Center survivor, was released from the hospital this week.
I thought I lost everything.
Like so many unsuspecting people on that morning of September 11th, Dhingra was just stepping off the elevator on the 83rd floor when his life changed course in an instant.
Suddenly I just heard an explosion, and before I knew it, from the side and the back, I was just engulfed in a big ball of fire.
With burns over 40 to 50% of his body, he was rushed to the burn unit at the Weill Cornell Medical Center. 22 of the most severely burned survivors were brought here. As the busiest burn unit in the nation, the staff here is used to stress, but Director Roger Yurt describes those days as a blur.
And really, there's just so much work going on, patient after patient coming in, that we didn't have time to think.
Caring for burn victims requires special skills and round-the-clock care to stave off shock, infection, pneumonia, and excruciating pain that comes with the injuries.
The patients with the biggest injuries had 80–90% of their body burned.
Half are still clinging to life. Dr. Yurt alone is performing 3 skin graft surgeries a day in the hopes of seeing someone else walk out the front door soon.
Mary. Hi. Hi, how are you?
Mary Joss hopes to be next.
I have third-degree burns on my back. This is burned. I had shrapnel, which took out part of this arm. All right, and shrapnel on the leg. I've had stitches on my head and on the bottom of my feet.
An employee of the state tax department, 2 years away from retirement, Mary says she owes her future to the burn unit and to a stranger named Eric, who helped her down 77 flights of stairs to waiting paramedics.
Yeah, I look forward to the future. I look forward to getting on with my life and living my life. And I can't wait.
Welcome dreams of tomorrows from those so close to having none. In New York, I'm Elizabeth Caledon for Eye on America.
We'll also take you inside the Weill Cornell Burn Center, where more than a dozen World Trade Center victims are hospitalized. Earlier this week, I visited the Weill Cornell Burn Center, where more than a dozen victims from the Trade Center are being cared for. The first patient I talked with was Paraser Nandan. He was in an elevator when it all happened. Watch this.
So we went in normal, it closed, and before it could have moved, I ordered, boom, and then debris started falling on us, oil started falling on us, and sparks. We were all on fire.
How did you get out?
Well, that's the point I'm coming to. So we were, all the ladies were screaming and everything. Well, I came to a point that this is it. But I saw a lady, a tall, big, strapping lady, and I don't know how she got her fingers between the doors, and she prized open it like that.
Elevator door.
Yeah, the elevator doors. And she flew out, another lady flew out, I flew out. But I was all on fire. As soon as I got out of the elevator, I tried to get the fire out of my head, my hands, when my shirt was ablaze too. But I couldn't get it out. So I rolled on the mat on the floor, rolling to get the fire out. When I finally got the fire out of me, I looked, I saw nobody.
You were all alone?
They were all gone, and they were smoke. So I took some time to come to my senses. And when I looked, I saw a hand on the door, and it clicked, and the person went down. So I said, that's the best way. I headed towards there. I opened the door when I saw the stairway, and I started to get down.
How was he treated, doctor?
Well, when he first got here, he was actually having trouble with breathing, and he was on a respirator. He was treated to maintain his function of his lungs. And then we took him into what we call the tank room and cleaned up his wounds, took off the dead tissue and so forth, and put him in a white cream that we use, an antibiotic cream.
Were you in a lot of pain?
Yes, I was. My whole skin was a blazing fire. A lot of pain, a lot of pain.
You were conscious?
I was conscious.
Continued. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor. Sure. What was the scene like here when you arrived?
It was like a war zone. I mean, there were just people all over the place setting up rooms, getting organized for the patients. That was one of the things that was impressive was our nurses and staff just came. They weren't called in. They just all came.
They knew to come.
They knew they better
So
get here.
you were fully staffed?
We were fully staffed, yes.
I imagine a lot of people walked, huh?
People walking over bridges, people walking here, yes.
And with Dr. Yurt now, we visit another burn patient, Vasana Mutatanat. She is Thai, her name Vasana, which means very lucky.
Yeah, my name means very lucky.
A very appropriate name. What happened, Vasana?
I heard the explosion sound. And
So you heard the sound?
Yeah, I heard the explosion sound like boom, boom, like that. And we kind of stopped and then asked what's going on. And, you know, no one answered anything as yet. The smoke coming out from the elevator, not the passenger elevators, the freight elevators. So we start turning back and then say, let's go. So I ran, you know, very fast out of the building from the west side.
You're safe, you figure, right?
Yeah, I figured that I can manage it, you know. I ran very quick outside the building and I was very unlucky because probably it's in very early. So I fell down after 10 feet out of the building on the west side. Yeah, and just lie down there, just few seconds, I feel like a heat swept through my back and my skirt. I feel like very, very hot, you know, heat swept through like that. I kind of turn my face to the side and I see the kind of sandstorm and the ball fire coming out from the building like huge.
Came out from the main floor of the building?
Yeah, came out from the west gate of the buildings. And with that, I saw girls and many others who usually smoke in the morning before they're going out to work, blew away with that fire on their back and their hair. Everybody just go like screaming.
And you stayed on the ground?
I still stay on the ground, helps it, you know. But then after probably 5 minutes, my husband actually, you know, he walked into that building with me.
He works there too?
He works there too, but then on that day, he was luckier than me. He walked separate. He's not going up with me by that day. He said he's going to buy something from the Duane Reade store. So he walked, so he walked to the other way. But then he come back and extend his hand and pull me up and try to, you know, help me.
She looks terrific. Where were her burns?
Her entire back was burned. Both of her legs were extensively burned. She had about a 40% of her body was burned.
Was she in danger?
Oh yes, she was at high risk. She has had 2 operations. She had her entire back grafted, and both of her legs have been skin grafted now.
Thank you and good luck.
You're welcome. Very nice to see you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you later.
Extraordinary, the attitude, Doctor.
Yes, she's very strong.
Brian Reeves, who I urged later not to run out. How you doing, Brian?
Okay, Mr. King.
So where were you when it happened?
I had entered the building because I just started my rounds. I entered the building and was going to do the lobby post. After visiting the lobby post, supposed to visit them 2 or 3 times. And I was just starting my first round inside the lobby. And when I went inside and I went to the first guard, I guess that's when the plane hit. And he had turned around. I didn't feel it just shook the way he did. I don't know if it was because of the way I emptied the building or what. And he looked at me and asked me, was that a bomb? And I said, I don't know. And on the opposite side, that's when a lot of debris started falling and we just ran. And I started to run outside. And when I ran outside, it was like a gust of wind that knocked me over.
And how'd you get burned?
I don't know when I got burned. But I just know when it knocked me over, there was something. The windows blew out, and when the windows blew out, I was on the ground, and like I said, there was a gust of wind. And when I opened my eyes, I seen bright orange light.
scared, huh?
Yeah.
Boy.
And I screamed, and my son flashed before me right in front of my face, and I just...
Your son's face?
Yeah, my son.
How old is he?
He's right there. In the picture, he's 7. Right against the wall there.
Boy.
Yeah.
He was in school, huh?
Mm-hmm. His face flashed before me, and I just got up and ran. I wanted to see if I had another chance, you know, so I just...
Did you know you were burned?
Well, yeah, I think my coat was on fire, and I went around to, around by West Street where the Olympia bus pull up, and I felt heat, and I went over and I was gonna, I was thinking, but I was gonna try to drop in the bushes, but of course, if I was on fire, the bushes would ignite. So I just started to take off my jacket. I took off my jacket, and once I guess I wasn't burning no more, I had the sense that I wasn't burning no more, I started to make my way across the street over to where they had the ramps, one of the ramps over there.
It's gone now.
I went over there, and the guard that was in there told me, you know, he looked at me and he asked what happened to me, and he told me to sit down, but I just kept moving.
Tell me what was the condition of Brian?
Brian was stable, but he had a major burn.
Where?
He was in a lot of pain. Worst burns were on his back, some burns up on his head, burns on your arms also, right? And he ended up having to have surgery, and actually Dr. Bauer is going to plan to operate again tomorrow, is that right? To do the
More
final
graft?
more grafting on his back, right?
Good luck. You got a great little boy. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
We're with 2 more patients on the burn unit, both of whom worked at the World Trade Center. They are Ling Young over here and Mary Jo's over here. What did you do at the center, Mary?
I worked for the state of New York,
What floor?
86th floor.
What happened?
After the Tower 1 was hit, we had kind of all decided that regardless of what the Trade Center said, we were going to leave the building. And after notifying everybody on our floor, we went down to the 78th floor. But before we could leave there, the plane hit.
You know it was a plane?
Not at the time.
No.
All right, afterwards we found out. But there was an explosion. I was thrown. And where my damages happened.
And Ling, where were you?
Exactly where she is.
You worked together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Worked for the state of New York?
Yes.
25 years we've been friends.
Actually, 27.
So
Together.
you went down too? Did you fall?
No, I got the same thing. Was blown out, and actually I didn't know she went down already. And we sat down. We actually sat at the debris for I don't know how long, because we didn't know where the stair was. I didn't know where the stair was until someone came up and said, "Hey, you know, we found the stairs." And that's when I.
When did you get those burns?
At the time when the plane hit.
Right at the when
Yeah.
did where
Same
your
thing.
burns?
Same place. We
So
were at
you
the same place.
did you know you were on fire in a sense?
No, I was on a fire, which I think is from the heat.
That's what we were told. It was
Yeah.
the heat.
How did you get out?
Walked down
Yeah,
78,
she walked.
78 flights.
In pain?
Yeah, I was very fortunate, and to a certain extent, I got down a flight of stairs, and there was a gentleman, early 30s, named Eric, and I looked at him and I said, "Can you help me?" And he literally helped me down 77 flights.
Helped you by holding your
Just
hand?
holding my hand, talking to me, trying to focus me away from everything that had happened, to family, to whatever, to get me down. And
How'd you get down?
Like I said, someone came up and said to me, you know, there's the stairs, follow me. And I went all the way down, and then I understand from later, there's a fire marshal actually escorted me down to the 40th floor. I took the service elevator downstairs.
That worked.
Yes, and when
Wow.
I went downstairs, I was supposed to be in the concourse. But somehow the fireman took me outside, and if he didn't take me outside, I would not be here. And I have a lot to thank to the fire marshal.
And the ambulances get to you right away?
they worked fantastic.
Yes.
And they brought us up here, thank
Did you
God.
come together?
Yes.
Yes.
We did
Really?
everything together.
Yeah, believe it
We
or
went
not.
to school together.
You're going to get tired of each other.
I'm telling you, it was just like a coincidence. that
Coincidence, and thank God we were
everything
together.
You feel lucky, girls?
Oh, God, yes. Very lucky.
So lucky that I can't even describe.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Doctor, you do great work.
Yes, they do.
You ought to be very proud. You get a lot of satisfaction.
Thank you.
Yes, we did.
These firemen were amazing, huh? Getting these people here, and the ambulance workers, the emergency.
They were, I mean, we lost, I think, 7 ambulances at the scene. We lost some of our own paramedics. We lost 3 people down there. And so it was amazing that they could still mobilize and get patients moved around.
Doctor, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
I know you got another surgery.
Right.
Continue good work.
Thank you.
Thanks for this. We're at New York Presbyterian Cornell Medical Center, and this is the burn unit. And with Dr. Yerd, I'm Larry King.
Today, I recognize heroes and stand a bit taller and stronger, 'cause I will never be the same after the day.
Suddenly I just heard an explosion, and before I knew it, from the side and the back, I was just engulfed in a big ball of fire. I thought I lost everything.
One month ago, Mary Jost was on the 78th floor of the South Tower at the Trade Center when the second plane hit her building. Despite serious injuries and burns, she and her husband Dave still consider themselves to be among the lucky ones. Mr. and Mrs. Jost, good morning.
Good morning.
You're on the 78th floor. Normally you work on what, on the 86th,
86th
right?
floor, correct.
How'd you find yourself on the 78th?
When after the plane had hit the first tower, we had smelled smoke in the building, and we decided that we were going to leave. All right, just because of the ventilating systems. So we took an elevator. After I checked my boss's office, I took an elevator down to the 78th floor, which is the sky lobby. And it was packed. But there was no panic amongst anybody.
Did you know what had happened? Did you know what was going on?
We didn't know it was terrorism. I mean, if we look in hindsight, it was a beautiful, clear day. Why would a plane have hit the tower? But we didn't know. We knew a plane had hit because people had seen it.
Yeah.
All right, but I was on 78 trying to get down to the first floor.
How and where did you get your burns and your shrapnel wounds?
On the 78th floor, when the second plane hit, which I know now was a plane, I was thrown. And that's where I got my burns and my shrapnel wounds.
Did you realize just then the extent of your injuries?
I knew I was hurt. I knew I was hurt pretty bad because I had stuff all over me. And my only thought at that point was to get out.
Had you called Dave already and told him we're getting out of here?
Yeah, I did. After the first plane hit, I had called and I said the plane had hit. It was the first tower, not our tower, and that we were going to leave.
Dave, when did you hear from her again?
I didn't hear from her again. I heard from the hospital. It was about 11:30. I got a call from the ER, New York Presbyterian Hospital, and they said that she's with us, she's awake, she's speaking, and told us that we had to call you. All right, and I guess right shortly after that, they put a breathing tube down. So I couldn't talk to her on the phone, but she was in the ER.
But I guess for that hour after the first phone call, it must have been maddening. You were, what, sitting at home watching this unfold?
It was unbelievable. Yeah, I hung up with her about 10 of 9, and my daughter called me, and I'm talking to her and watching the TV set, and I saw the second plane go into the building. And I just went nuts. I told my daughter, I have to get off the phone. I have to leave the lines open because Mary's going to call me. Fortunately, my neighbor came over. She saw the same thing. She rushed over and was with me. My son, my daughter-in-law, Robin, they were just married on Saturday, the Saturday before. They came over. They stayed with me the whole morning, and my son stayed with me the whole day.
And you were struggling at that time the whole morning, going down through the stairwell. I understand you had a good Samaritan.
I did. I had a gentleman named Eric, last name is Thompson.
Thompson.
Which I found out now. Yes, he did. When I got down to the 77th floor, he was there, and I looked at him. I said, would you help me? And he actually helped me down 77 flights of stairs through the concourse to the paramedics.
Wow. Have you been in touch with Eric since?
Yes. I talked to him Monday night, and it was wonderful. It was just such an easy conversation. We talked for about a half hour, and when I'm feeling better, we're going to get together and go out for dinner.
That's a terrific story. And what about rehabilitation for your injuries?
I'm going 2 to 3 days a week, working still with the burn center, and who are marvelous, by the way. I can't say enough about the Cornell Burn Center. Those people.
Neither of us can.
Yeah.
They were magnificent. The nurses, the doctors, the
Everybody,
staff.
and they're continuing. They're watching my progress.
And you just got out of there last week?
Yeah.
And the back end of this story also is you can't get back into your home, right?
Right. Not yet.
Because you're down by the World Trade Center where you live.
They've opened the building about a week ago, but Mary's got to spend some time up here next to the hospital, close to the hospital.
Right.
Getting in and out of the apartment down there is
You can't get in and out. You can't drive.
very difficult.
But you're still among the lucky ones.
I am one of the most lucky people in the world.
Very lucky.
Terrific. That's terrific. Mary, stay well.
Thank you so
Get well.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dave, thanks.
Thank you.
About time for us to sign this day off. What an amazing anniversary it's been.
It is. 1 month ago today.
It still seems very difficult to reconcile the timetable with the degree to which we've changed. People are going to be marking it all day long. We've already noted the dine-out experience. We've already noted that there was a moment of silence down at the World Trade Center, and at the Pentagon, the president will be there later today, too.
Remember, 4,815 missing, 422 confirmed dead in New York alone.
Yeah. So as we leave here, we leave with an appropriate moment of silence. We'll see you tomorrow.
Assignments for the next day to begin to think about response.
He made it clear that this was not to happen again. I think he used words like, don't ever let this happen again.
There was a task ahead of us. There was a serious job ahead of us. And the president was ready for it. And we were there ready to help him.
And that's where I think they started planning for what would become war.
I mean, the order was get the troops ready. It was that simple. It was that direct. Get the troops ready.
It is 9:30 p.m. Only 12 hours have passed since the attacks began. A day that dawned full of possibility and promise ends on the eve of war. So much in just 12 hours, and who among us ever imagined that we would see the country go into a sort of a lockdown? But that's what we did that day, and we haven't really come out of it yet. Symptomatic of that, the fact that the Vice President right now back in a secure facility.
Precisely. Thanks very much. That's extraordinary to relive it in that fashion. Charles Gibson. When we come back this evening, we'll relive something else. I hope you'll stay with us for our primetime coverage on this anniversary of 9/11.
From ABC News, this is 9/11. Tonight, how critical decisions meant life or death for those inside the Twin Towers. An exclusive ABC News USA Today report. What really happened after the planes hit?
The bottom wing is hung in my office door 20 feet from where I am. And I'm saying to myself, Lord, this plane is gonna explode and I'm gonna die.
Miraculous stories of survival, told by those who escaped death when so many others did not. An ABC News investigation. How vulnerable is our nation's security 1 year later?
We are vulnerable to covert delivery of weapons of mass destruction.
You will be shocked to see what we discovered when we tested the system that's supposed to protect us from nuclear terrorism.
If they're really on top of it, they should pick this up.
ABC's Brian Ross with an exclusive report that you cannot miss. Barbara Walters with an intimate look at the grieving families struggling to rebuild their lives after the worst of tragedies.
This is their father, this is our husband, and we're talking about ashes and body parts and other people's ashes, and it's just sick.
ABC News has followed their progress for the last year, an exclusive look at how far they have come. And Diane Sawyer with 63 symbols of loss and love, the widows and babies of 9/11. Their stories will touch and surprise you. The renewal of life. Now reporting, Peter Jennings.
The former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, who helped this city get through September the 11th, said recently what many people in this city feel. Whatever the terrorists were trying to accomplish, this city is stronger, not weaker, for their murderous actions. It could also be said for the country as a whole. We've all worked very hard in the last year to comprehend the details of what happened in those buildings in less than 2 hours from the time the planes hit until they collapsed. And no one has done, we think, a more comprehensive job than USA Today. And it was a huge job to document what was happening in the trade towers after they were hit because so many people died. We've been working with the newspaper, and you will see that with some astonishing computer renditions, we've come to realize that very often the tiniest decision meant the difference between living and dying. I might add that some of those who survived have been very generous with their time so that we could understand.
I was on the phone talking to one of my colleagues in another office, heard a loud roar, and I had to turn 90 degrees to look out the window to look north, and right there, coming right at me, was this large passenger jet, maybe just 2 or 3 plane lengths away from me. And I just ducked my head and prayed to God to save me, because I thought this was it.
8 floors below George Slay, Fred Eichler was standing at his window. He saw it too.
I mean, we were staring into the cockpit. We could not recognize anything. I mean, it did happen kind of quickly, but we saw the entire plane and then watched it crash into the building.
Got out of the elevator. I heard a whoosh, and I looked up, and the 3 elevators directly across from me were on fire. They just had exploded, and the doors on the elevators were ajar. I immediately decided I just have to go where I don't see flames. I ran out of the elevator into the first office I could find. It was an insurance company called Accelera. A gentleman there named Fred Eichler told me that he had actually just seen an American Airlines jet fly into the building while he was sitting having his breakfast.
Strangers thrown together in terrible circumstances. They would need each other to survive.
The hallway burst into flames outside of our door, so we were trapped in our office, and we could not get out. We believed that people knew we were up there, but I'm not quite sure anybody really did know.
On an express elevator, Chris Young was alone, headed for the North Tower lobby.
I was in sort of a good mood, and so I started sort of just like jumping up in the elevator to see if I could get that, lighter than air feeling or whatever when the elevator's speeding down. It was just at that point that there was just a huge, massive shaking of the elevator that made it screech to a stop. And it was quickly followed by this just huge gust of wind that pushed into the elevator and sort of pushed in all this fine yellow dust into the elevator. And I mean, as rational as it was or whatever, I had been jumping in the elevator. It was like, oh my God, I've done something.
91 floors above, George Slay struggled to recover after the plane hit a few feet over his head.
And everything came down around me. My ceiling tiles all collapsed around me. Light fixtures came down. All the books on my bookshelf tumbled on top of me. So I didn't really feel the impact. I was distracted by all of this. And we got out of our office space into the hallway. There was some smoke on the floor, but we headed to the 3rd stairway. We looked up and there was debris in the stairwell above us. There was some debris in the form of sheetrock on the stairs. We just lifted that against the wall and we were able to walk down the stairs from that point. There was no one coming down when we entered into the stairwell.
And no one ever would. The 92nd floor would become the bottom of the North Tower tomb. The upper floors were sealed off. The plane's impact had collapsed all 3 escape stairwells. Elevator shafts were destroyed or had become infernos. Rescue would prove impossible. Those people trapped in the upper 19 floors would not survive. The South Tower was 125 feet from the north, and on the 105th floor, a large meeting had assembled in the offices of Aon Insurance. Joe Ditmar was at the meeting.
The lights flickered. A gentleman came into the room and said that there had been an explosion in the first tower, and that we had to leave because we were being evacuated.
Throughout the South Tower, the alarm spread and evacuation began. Most of the people had little idea of what had happened to the North Tower or how severe the damage was. People on the 105th floor began down through the stairwell, and on the 90th floor they noticed a door open. They filed out of the stairwell.
We went out onto the 90th floor. I don't even know whose offices were there, and that's when we first had the chance to experience what was going on. Worst 30 seconds of my life. The first thing that I noticed was screaming. A man, very distinct voice of a man screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God," and a woman just shrieking. So obviously I had to look. I looked out. You could see that the first tower was engulfed in flames. There was a gaping hole in the building. And then things just coming out of the building, just falling out of the building. The furniture and the papers and the people.
Person just wandered to the side of the building, obviously choking and blind from the smoke. And since the floor had been blown away, was jagged, probably didn't realize where the end of the floor was and just fell right out of the building. And as you stand there at the window, you just watch this body drop. And your stomach and your knees drop right along with that. And then another, and then another.
That just scared the daylights out of me. I just immediately started telling people, you need to leave. Whatever it is, we'll find out when we're downstairs.
Florence Jones worked for Baseline Financial with offices on the 77th and 78th floors of the South Tower, connected by an escalator. She remembers pleading with Jill Campbell, a receptionist on the 78th floor, to leave.
I could tell she was scared, and I just kept saying, get in an elevator, get in an elevator. She wasn't going to leave until someone more superior in charge told her to leave. And she didn't do that until the chief financial officer said to her, look, if you want to leave, go ahead and leave. The last I saw of her, she went out to go wait for an elevator to go down.
If the boss stayed, the staff stayed. Today, your fate was sealed if you stayed too long. In the South Tower, workers from most floors were heading down through the 3 emergency stairwells and using the building's 99 elevators. Thousands of people went steadily out of the building. But in the North Tower, the conditions were getting steadily worse. Fred Eichler and Jonathan Judd were still trapped in offices on the 83rd floor.
I don't know if it was metal or glass, but you could see glittering things coming down, big crashes. You could hear big crashes, and everyone said, stay away from the windows. You could see tons and tons of papers flying, like a ticker tape parade. And it continued to get smokier and smokier.
My wife, my parents, and one of my daughters called, and I never told them what the real situation was. I never told them that there was an inferno right outside our door. But realistically, I really believe that was the last time I'm going to speak to them.
Somewhere near the North Tower lobby, Chris Young's elevator was still stuck. Young, alone, was desperately pushing emergency buttons.
This computer voice came on, saying that your call had been received, that someone would be there that someone would be with you shortly. And it just kept repeating that message over and over, and there was no way to make it stop. It was about 15 minutes or so, and then someone did come on to the intercom, a live person, and the first thing they said was, anybody in here? I just sort of yelled out, yes. I asked him what had happened, but he really wouldn't give me any specifics. He just said, it's an emergency situation, and that someone would be there shortly to get me out of the elevator.
The mortal peril of those trapped in the North Tower's upper floors was becoming increasingly clear. Desperate for air, windows were broken. People clung to the side of the building 100 stories up. Workers in the South Tower looked at them from just feet away.
To see these young people doing the sign of the cross and jumping, you were like, oh my God. It's got to be awful up there for people to make that choice to want to jump and know that you're going to die. And you can't pull your eyes away. This message is like to, just out of sheer dignity for them, you'd like to, but it's very hard to do that. I kept saying to myself, this is not a movie. This is real. These are real human beings that are smashing. It's just, that's an awful thing to see.
Florence Jones had gone to the 78th floor elevators, but they were now packed.
And I was like, you know, we're not getting out this way. We have to go downstairs, make sure everyone is off the floor, and we gotta leave. And that's the only reason why I'm here today, is because I ran down the escalator with them to make sure everybody was off the 77th floor.
On this day, the smallest decision would be crucial. 7 floors above, on the 84th floor of the South Tower, a similar scene was playing out. Brian Clark worked for Eurobank.
One woman in particular, Susan Polio, did not know she was about to see what she saw. And as she looked up, all of a sudden she spun in horror and ran back to me, the 5 yards back from the glass I was. And Brian, she said, people are dying, she said. And I said, Susan, I know it's a terrible thing. And I put my arms around her. I said, come on, let's get you composed. And I walked her off our trading floor, down the center hallway, to the west side of the building, which is where the ladies' room is. And I said, you know, get yourself together. And it really is that walk, I think, that saved my life.
Throughout the South Tower, people were going down through the stairwells or using the elevators. And then, just before 9 a.m., there was an announcement broadcast throughout the building.
The statement was, it appears that Trade Center 2 is now safe. You can go back to your offices. And at which point, a lot of people stopped dead in the stairwell.
Actually saw people going back in the other direction, people going back to their places of work. They were, you know, hey, going back. I remember clearly saying, well, where are you going? And he says, I'm going back to work. I said, God, you're more dedicated than I could ever hope to be.
78 is a sky lobby. There's express elevators that go from 78 to 1. So me and 5 of my friends decided, you know, okay, let's walk up a couple of flights. Why walk down? It was really hot. So we walked up back to 78, figuring on catching an elevator.
The 78th floor sky lobby had a bank of 12 express elevators and 24 local elevators to the upper floors. The lobby had become packed with people, some heading out of the building, some back to their offices.
That's where I saw Mary, and she said, you know, in words that I shouldn't use here, that there was no conceivable way she was going to walk down 90 more flights of stairs or 78 more flights of stairs. She was taking the elevator. The elevators were running, come on. And just had a gut feeling. I can never really explain it 100%. Something that just told me, now, keep walking.
Whether to use the stairs or wait for an elevator, another fateful decision. 1 floor below, Florence Jones looked south from the 77th floor windows.
I could see straight across the floor, which was all glass. And I could not figure out, on a bright, sunny, cloudless day, what this black thing was that was approaching the building.
4 floors above, Stanley Primnath saw the same thing.
And for no apparent reason, I just raised my head, watching towards the harbor, the Statue of Liberty, and what I saw was a giant aircraft come in eye contact, eye level towards me. and I dove under my desk. This impact was so great that I got temporarily deaf. Couldn't hear anything. It looks like a demolition crew came in and just knocked everything flat. Steel doors were knocked off. All the walls were flattened. All the desks and every piece of furniture was damaged. All the computers were like smithereens. The ceiling caved in, and part of the 82nd floor collapsed. And I'm hiding under a steel desk, the only one that stood intact. My Bible was on top of that desk.
Stanley Primnath had survived the direct hit. The nose of the plane had come right through the windows of his floor.
And the bottom wing is hung in my office door 20 feet from where I am. And the wing starts to burn. I couldn't see the rest of the plane. And I'm saying to myself, oh Lord, this plane is gonna explode and I'm gonna die. I have to get out of here as fast as possible.
3 floors above Stanley, on the 84th floor, Brian Clark's decision to walk a colleague to the bathroom had taken him out of the plane's path. Nearly 50 people died on the east side of the floor. On the west, there was a handful of survivors. Brian Clark and Ron DeFrancesca were 2 of them.
I got knocked flying. And, you know, the false ceilings all came down, and debris and dust, and all the lights went out. And it was louder than you could imagine.
And for the next 10 seconds, I experienced terror. And the building swayed. The building just went a long way. It seemed like for 10 seconds, one way. This felt like it was going yards. And I thought we were going over. I thought we were falling to the west into the Hudson. But it stopped and didn't move and then came back to vertical.
My colleague and he was screaming, and I grabbed him and I led this man into the stairwell with me. And we proceeded on our journey.
Now the people in the North Tower stared at the South Tower to see the horror that mirrored their own. Jonathan Judd was on the phone to his wife, who saw the plane hit on television.
And as I was speaking to her, she said, oh my God, look out the window. And the other plane had hit the South Tower, and all I saw was flame. My entire field of vision was flame. It was like hell. That's when I really, really got scared. And my legs started to shake like I've never felt them before, like, almost like I couldn't stand up.
We heard this massive explosion, and we thought that the floors above us were collapsing on us. At that point, we made a decision to try to get out. As we got to maybe 5, 10 feet to where we thought we were going, all the lights went out, and we could not see anything. So we decided to go back to our office, and there wasn't a word that was spoken. It was dead silent. And the only noise you heard was the ceiling tile falling all around you. Either be rescued or die. Those were the choices.
Such choices. Joe Ditmar chose not to take an elevator and walk down the stairs. Brian Clark chose to help a distressed colleague to the bathroom, away from the windows and a floor that exploded on impact. Florence Jones chose to go down a floor to 77 to organize the evacuation of her offices. All of them survived.
For me, that decision was crucial because everybody practically on that floor died on 78. And where I would have been standing, there would have been no way I could have gotten out of the way of that airplane.
The United plane had devastated the South Tower from the 78th through the 84th floors. Hundreds of people had been standing in the 78th floor sky lobby waiting for elevators. Only 10 of them are known to have survived. They were standing at the far north end of the lobby, very near the only stairwell that had not been destroyed. Mary Jose was there. So were Kelly Ryer and Donna Spira.
There was like 6 of us, and I says, is anybody going up? And my friend just turned around and said, I'm not going back up. As soon as she said that, the plane hit.
As I woke up, I turned, and I saw fire, and my face felt like it went on fire. And then I turned, and I felt like my back was on fire, and I rolled. But I couldn't roll far because there were people around me.
And I remember walking into the elevator and then just feeling a blast like nothing I'd ever felt before, just a wave of heat, and just I was smashed into the back wall of the elevator and just crumpled to the floor. When I regained my senses, there was an inferno in the elevator shaft that was coming into the elevator. The fire was coming in, the hot embers were flying into the elevator, and it was filling up with black smoke. I realized then what the people in Trade Center 1, the choice they were making, which was, you'll do anything but burn to death. It's the most horrifying experience that I've ever faced in my life. And I remember thinking, well, if I can stand up long enough to breathe in the hot smoke, I'll die of smoke asphyxiation, and I won't know that I'm going to burn to death trapped in this elevator.
I remember seeing my friend laying on the floor. My pocketbook had fallen on her. She wasn't conscious. None of my friends that I was with on 78 made it. I just couldn't see. It was so dark. I just couldn't see anybody. I couldn't help anybody because I was hurt.
I knew there was a stairwell, and I crawled until I was blocked by the elevator banks, and I stood up, and fortunately the door opened to touch. And the lights were on in the stairwell. So I basically yelled back that if anybody could hear me, as far as I knew, there was nobody alive. And nothing, heard nothing back. And then I proceeded to go down.
I then, I guess, started to look around and realized that the doors hadn't closed all the way and that maybe I could get out of the elevator. And I start pulling, but the fire is coming up from the floor and it's singeing my arms every time I'm trying to do this. As I open the door and I look forward, what I saw was the whole floor was on fire. The people that were in the sky lobby, most of them appeared to have been killed instantly. There were some people who seemed to be alive. Those that were alive, as we're crawling along, as I'm crawling along, you're touching each body to see if the person's alive or not alive.
And that's when I met up with Kelly. That was a miracle because there wasn't many people that made it on that floor.
The first thing I said to her was, I guess God wants us to live. Because there's no other explanation for why we were alive that I could see from what we walked through.
I just held on to Kelly for dear life. I held on to his belt buckle. And we just started going down the stairs. And there wasn't many people going down the stairs.
Kelly and Donna, who was badly wounded, were on their way down out of the smoke and the flames. Just below, Mary Jose was about to fall into the arms of a stranger, Eric Thompson, who was looking up the shattered stairwell.
All I could see was blackness behind her. The door looked like it was wedged open. The pipes were down. There was water running. The ventilation had fallen. The sheetrock was laying crumbled. There was soot on everything. I just heard someone before. I heard her before I saw her, and she's like, "Is anyone down there? Can you please come and help me? I'm hurt."
I don't think I really ever knew how badly I was hurt at all. I didn't know I had a blow to the head. I mean, I didn't know that part of my arm was gone, you know. I didn't. I had no idea, and I guess it's part of it is your systems just take over. Adrenaline just keeps pumping, and you just go.
On this day, strangers rescued strangers. In the South Tower, on the highest floors, only 17 people are known to have made it safely out of the building. Virtually no one made it unassisted. There would be no emergency help from below.
We entered the stairs on the 84th floor, stairway A, and only went down 3 floors when we met a woman and a smaller man, but a very heavy-set woman coming up, and she was insistent, stop, stop. You can't go down. We, referring to her associate, we've just come off a floor in flames, and we've got to go higher, get above the smoke. You can't, and she just wouldn't stop talking and said, no, you got to go up. And very quickly, 15, 20 seconds into that conversation, or the debate, if you like, I was distracted. And I heard this banging on the wall and a voice yelling in the darkness on the 81st floor, help, help, I'm buried, I can't breathe, is anybody there, help? And I was able to push the drywall back and get onto the 81st floor.
Just feet away, Stanley Premnath, who survived the plane's impact under his desk, was still alive. But he was trapped behind the burning and collapsed walls of his former office.
And I started to crawl. And I'm saying, don't leave him to die. This is Stan from the loans department. Please, help me, somebody.
But I could see through this opening. I said, now you must jump. You've got to jump over this. That's the only way out.
He just grabbed me around the shoulder and the neck, and he just pulled with everything he got, and he yanked me through that wall. And with the impact, I just fell on top of him. And I hugged that man. I gave him the biggest kiss, and I said, you are my guardian angel.
And he gave me the biggest hug imaginable, and to break the clench, more or less, I said, I'm Brian. He said, I'm Stanley. You know, we're going to be brothers for life.
Back in the stairwell, all the other survivors had decided to go up, including Ron DiFrancesco.
Down was the fire, right? So we started climbing and, you know, looking for a way out, but all the doors seemed to be locked.
To go up or go down? Stanley and Brian had the same decision to make.
And we looked at each other, and I just instinctively went down. It was in my mind that, regardless of what that lady had said, that I needed to test what was below. I would go down, and if we were stopped by something, we were stopped, but if not, we just keep going.
66 floors below, Joe Dittmar was close to the safety of the streets.
There was a guy, a security guy, around the 15th floor, and he was singing. I don't even remember what he was singing, but he was in the middle of singing, and then he'd stop and he'd say, you're going to remember this day for the rest of your life. Be proud to be an American. You're going to remember this day for the rest of your life.
No one would know, of course, that time was short and the towers were about to fall. And as we've seen, complete strangers were thrown together in the most desperate of circumstances. They would help each other survive.
When we come back, they survived the plane's impact, but how would they survive the unthinkable, the collapse of the towers?
I just thought that that this was going to be a tomb. I prayed, please God, make it quick.
ABC's coverage of 9/11 will continue in a moment.
They were American heroes fighting the war against terror, but did they bring terror home? 4 soldiers accused of killing their wives. Friday, what you don't know about the Fort Bragg murders. John Miller investigates on the season premiere of 2020, Friday.
George Stephanopoulos. He's never done anything just the same old way. And Sunday mornings will be no exception. Starting this Sunday, it's a new This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Sundays, this is where news will be made.
And from Ground Zero, good evening once again, everyone. I'm Bill Ritter.
And I'm Dinah Williams as we continue our coverage of the anniversary of September 11th. It has been a day filled with emotion, grief for those who were lost in the terror attacks, and also pride for those who have tried to help. In Battery Park tonight, a very simple ceremony taking place with the lighting of the eternal flame of the spear that was pulled from the rubble of the World Trade Center.
A short time earlier, President Bush and the First Lady walked down the ramp at Ground Zero, and they laid a wreath in honor of all those who died in the terror attacks. Afterwards, they spent an hour talking with the relatives of the victims who were gathered at the site. The President clearly enjoying it, shaking hands, offering hugs, even signing autographs.
Signing a lot of autographs. At St. Patrick's Cathedral, Edward Cardinal Egan presided over a special memorial mass for the victims of September 11th. The cathedral was filled with mourners, family and friends of victims who 1 year later are still coming to terms with their grief. Cardinal Egan offered them a message of hope for the future.
Something we all need. And on that note, that is it for us, at least for now. Thanks for watching. I'm Bill Ritter.
Stay with Eyewitness News throughout the evening for live updates as we continue our commemoration of September 11th. And of course, we'll be right here at 11 o'clock for a full wrap-up of the day's events. I'm Dinah Williams. We'll see you again in a little while. Have a good one.
Courageous Steps, Wednesdays. ABC News, 9/11 continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Welcome back. In the next half hour, we're going to continue our moment-by-moment reconstruction, which we did with USA Today, of what happened inside the Twin Towers in the final moments before the buildings fell. The fires in the highest floors were out of control. Rescue to those floors was impossible. No skyscraper had ever collapsed because of fire, no matter how severe. So how could anyone expect it now? In the South Tower's 78th floor sky lobby, those survivors nearest the stairwell who could walk were now heading down. But many more people lay there in shock and in need of help, including Ling Young.
We can't find the stairs. We're afraid to move because I don't know how safe the floor is. So we decided, you know what, we're just going to sit around. We're going to wait for help. And that probably is a good 10, 15 minutes.
Into this desperate place, another stranger arrived, wearing a red bandana.
There's a man who came up out of nowhere and say, hey, I found the stairs, follow me. So we walked down about maybe, I don't know, maybe like 10 or 15 floors. Then I turned around, I saw him carrying another woman in his back. He dropped the woman down and he said, you know, you gotta walk because I'm going back upstairs. And that's the last time I saw him.
There was just this guy, and I don't know who the guy is, that was just in the doorway. And all you heard him say was, over here. The door was open and you could see a light.
Over and over, there are reports of one man systematically pulling people to their feet and heading them down the stairs.
The man in the red bandana, that would be Wells. That would be the way he would react.
Wells Crowther, a securities trader on the 104th floor. He had been a volunteer firefighter since he was 16. He always carried a red bandana in his back pocket. Like his father, when Wells' parents heard the stories, they knew.
When I heard the man in the red bandana, it went straight to my heart, and I just knew inside. Stepping in out of nowhere and rushing and calling for a fire extinguisher and carrying a victim down to clear air, I just knew it was our son.
In the months afterward, a photograph was circulated among the 78th floor survivors. At least 2 people identified him.
His face is always in my mind. A young kid, short hair, husky. When I saw the picture, I said, that's it.
In the last hour of his life, Wells Remy Crowther, he was a firefighter, which is what he wanted truly to be doing.
Months later, Wells Crowther's body was found in the remains of the South Tower lobby with a group of lost firemen. The stairwells above the floors where the plane hit were now thick with smoke and virtually impassable. Ron DiFrancesco, who had climbed up seeking clear air, was now desperately climbing down. On the 78th floor, in the one stairwell that had not been destroyed, he laid down gasping for air.
Somebody lifted me out of there. I got up and, felt my way towards the stairwell. And At that point, I saw all the drywall down there was on fire. And once I ran past that, the stairwell was clear. I was by myself.
Though no one could know, the Twin Towers were both perilously close to collapse. For those still in the buildings, time was short. On the 83rd floor of the North Tower, a group including Jonathan Judd and Fred Eichler was still trapped in the office.
I don't think we could have survived another 5 or 10 minutes in our office. That's how bad the smoke was getting. I just did not figure we were going to get out. And we were just prepared to die, you know, in the office. I mean, that's what was going through our heads. I was sitting on a chair, and I was facing the door, and about 9:30, I spotted this flashlight.
And you could see the beams of light going through the door, and it was like a godsend.
And it turned out to be a fireman and a building worker. I jumped up, signaled them, and they did come in and basically rescued us.
Saved by rescue workers who reached the 83rd floor of the North Tower. Saved by the glass office doors that let them see the flashlight. Just down the hall, a group of 13 people were trapped inside the offices of General Telecom. The front doors were wood. They couldn't see the flashlight. They were not discovered. All would perish. 83 floors below, Chris Young, still stuck in his elevator, is desperately trying to pry open the doors. They will not budge. He still has no idea what is going on.
I sat back down on the floor. I started just humming to myself. And it did get very boring in there, and I would sit there and I would start running through, scenarios of what might have happened or whatever. And I could vaguely hear it, not very well, but outside the elevator, I could vaguely hear, sirens. I heard occasional screams. But I could never, make out voices or anything or hear people talking.
Those people who would survive were moving quickly now down to the streets. And strangers encouraged strangers, assisting the wounded, comforting those in shock.
And I think we sort of got through it by just kind of calling out floor by floor. Okay, we're at 66. Okay, we're at 65. Only 63 more to go. 50. See how many we made.
Floor 20. I just remembered it was the 20th floor, and I just said, I can't do this anymore because I was hurting so bad. And I stopped.
Her arms were severely burned. Her face appeared to be burned. She was limping. Both her wrists looked to be broken.
And Kelly just said, come on. He said, we did all these flights. You got 20 more. And I says, okay. And we just did it.
I knew I was growing tired at times. And Eric would tell me, he said, why don't you just sit down? And I think I'd sit down, and I go, no, we have to go. Because there was just something inside of me that kept saying, we have to get out of here.
As we were going down the stairs, I remember I had tears in my eyes, and Fred Eichler was putting his arm around me, trying to calm me down, and he's saying, what's wrong? Are you okay?
He really thought, he was never going to, see his baby again. And I know going down the steps, many times I put my arm around them, and I said, we're going to make it, we're going to be okay. The people who were going down stayed to the left, and the firemen were on the right side of the stairwell coming up. And that is a very haunting memory, seeing all those firemen going up the staircases. We were going down, knowing that probably they did not survive.
There was a look of both determination and fear in their faces that I'll never forget. I see it every day. Think about it every day.
We definitely wished them Godspeed. But that was like down in the 30s. And they were huffing and puffing in, and I'm like, you're nowhere near where you need to be. He says, be happy you're going down instead of coming up.
Firefighters would finally reach the 78th floor of the South Tower in time to find people trapped and alive, but too late to get them out. On street level, people from some of the highest and most devastated floors were finally out of the building and into the arms of waiting rescue workers.
I remember as people see us coming, I guess because of the way we looked, Donna, bleeding, I have, clothes are shredded and blood and debris all through our hairs and on our feet. They just part like the Red Sea to let us through.
So when I came out of the building, I think I was just collapsing at that point. And I remember Dominic carrying me and telling me it's going to be okay.
And I just said, don't worry about it, you're out now. I've got you. I said, if it hurts, just squeeze me. And she held tighter. And I said, you'll see your family today, don't worry about it, you're out. You're going to see your family, you'll go home, you'll be okay.
I don't even remember who took me. I just remember it being someone uniformed.
Mary Jose was immediately put on a stretcher, but not without saying goodbye to Eric Thompson.
And I remember giving him a hug and telling him, thank you for saving my life.
Hang in there, lady.
Ling Young made it out to the curb, escorted by a fireman from the 51st floor down. All the wounded were quickly loaded into ambulances. Stanley Primnath and Brian Clark stared back at the burning buildings.
And he looked through the trees, and he said, Brian, he said, I think that tower could come down.
And Brian had this look in his eyes. Stan, I told you steel don't bend. I'm an engineer. And we heard this strange sound. It was like steel bending and creaking. It was like a horrible, ghostly sound. And this building started to sway from side to side.
And I didn't finish the sentence, and we watched the tower start to slide down into its own dust.
As the South Tower began to fall, Ron DeFrancesco was just reaching the exit. He is one of the last people to make it out alive.
I looked out to Liberty Street and saw a big fireball coming. That's all I remember.
Ron DeFrancesco was blown across the street. He regained consciousness days later in a hospital. He had a fractured skull and burns over 67% of his body. Inside the North Tower, Fire Chief Rich Picciotto had worked his way up to the 35th floor when the South Tower went down.
All of a sudden, this noise starts. This horrendous, powerful noise. Kind of just freezes everyone in their tracks, and we're just looking up because it's coming from above us. What is that? The building is shaking. We're looking up. We're all just looking at the ceiling. And I'm just waiting for the ceiling to explode. And then the noise kind of just goes through us. And then the noise just blows, and then it stops. Utter silence.
George Slay had just come down all the way from the North Tower's 91st floor.
All the lights went out, and I was blown across the concourse. Just the force of what I imagined a tornado would be. I was able to stay on my feet, and was enveloped in a huge cloud of dust. And I thought my life was over at that point. And again, I just prayed to God to spare me, and in His mercy, He did.
Within the space of 100 minutes, George Slay had survived the crash of a plane just 20 feet over his head, and now the collapse of a skyscraper at his feet. Chris Young was still in his North Tower elevator. He did not know what had just happened, but he had heard it.
First, it started just as a rumble, and I could sort of feel it shaking into the elevator. It made the elevator just increasingly shake and shake and shake. And then it was followed by this gust of wind that started just pressing in just these massive amounts of dust in through the side cracks of the doors. And at that point, I did just sort of ball up totally on the floor with the shirt around my head because I didn't know what was going on.
When the South Tower collapsed, the fire department ordered the evacuation of all rescue personnel from the North Tower.
I took the bullhorn and I went to all 3 stairwells and yelled up and down. We're evacuating, we're getting out. This is the fire department, we're getting out.
Finally, the power just goes out. There was no particular event that preceded it, but just the power goes out in the elevator. Goes dark for a second, and then emergency lights do come on.
For one last time, Chris Young goes to the elevator doors and tries to pry them apart. And suddenly they open to the lobby of the North Tower.
It was I didn't know what to make of it at the time, but just a very surreal scene with everything of the lobby just completely debris strewn, and just inches of this sort of grayish, pinkish dust was everywhere, all over the place. And there was no one in the lobby. But then outside the building, I saw 2 firefighters, and I just yelled out to them, where do I go? And one of them turned back and looked at me and just sort of motioned me over with his hand. And then I took a look up the tower, and all I could see was, the smoke coming from the upper floors and fire shooting out. And I just let out, oh my God. But the firefighters just sort of jerked me then and said, come on, we gotta go.
Just as Chris Young got out of the building, the North Tower began to collapse. The fire chief, Rich Picciotto, was still on the 6th floor.
All of a sudden, that noise starts again. That horrendous noise from the last time, this noise, now it's intensified 100 times. The building is shaking like crazy now. You just knew it was going to be on you in a matter of seconds, and it was. I tried to run down the stairs and fell down, and tried to get up and fell again, tumbled, and then I had this falling sensation. And then a couple seconds later, deathly silence again. Black, silent black, and I'm covered with dust, debris. But I realized I was alive. So I just called out, is there anyone else here? And I started hearing, yeah, I'm here too. From both above me and below me.
In the rubble of the North Tower, part of one stairwell had remained intact. 14 people, 12 of them firemen, had survived there. But they were trapped, including Captain Jay Jonas, who was on his radio.
I said, Mayday, 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 Ladder 6 to Command Post, Mayday. And the Deputy Chief Tom Herring answers, says, go ahead, Ladder 6. This is Ladder 6. We're in the North Tower, Tower number 1, in the B stairway, and we're trapped between the 2nd and 4th floor. I get choked up every time I talk about this, but I remember Cliff Stapner in particular getting on the radio and say, we're coming for you, brother, we're coming for you. And they were. The Army of the New York City Fire Department was coming to get us.
Being realistic, I said, well, there's no way they're ever going to find us. There's 100 stories of debris on top of me. I just thought that this was going to be a tomb. I prayed, please God, make it quick, and it didn't happen.
For 3 hours, the firemen waited in the darkness, and then the smoke and the dust of the collapsed tower began to settle.
I'm just laying on my back there and looking up, and all of a sudden I could see a little, like from black, I could see a gray area. And then it's getting a little bit brighter and a little bit brighter. And I called up. I said, you know, do you guys see that? What is that?
All of a sudden, a beam of sunshine broke through the dust, and it came into the stairway. And it almost looked like a light from the heavens, literally. And it just hit me, and I says, guys, I see sunshine. So there used to be 106 floors above us, and now I see sunshine. This isn't as bad as we thought. And I says, we're gonna get out of here.
And then I said, Jay, you know, I'm climbing up further to the light. And I climb up, and all of a sudden I'm on this pile of debris, but I'm out. You can see the sky. All I could see was devastation. What you would picture a nuclear attack to be like. Just burning buildings and just steel and rubble.
They still had to climb out, a dangerous journey that would take hours.
You have all this twisted steel and ripped steel, which is all very sharp and jagged. And all of it's coated with this dust, which makes it very slippery. It's almost acting like talcum powder. Every once in a while, I say, come on, boys, keep going, keep going. I says, you don't have to move fast, but you got to keep going.
The final obstacle, a 3-story deep trench of twisted steel that they must cross.
And they were like, oh, we got to climb up the other side of that. I says, yeah. So your wife and kids are on the other side of that trench. Just keep going, keep going. I was able to see all my guys go up over that hill, and I got to send them home that day.
None of the survivors who gave us their time claim they have fully recovered. The past year has been harder than they imagined.
It's like my shadow. It's never gonna go away. It goes with me every place I go. It's the first thing I think about in the morning. It's the last thing I think about at night.
Every time that I've looked at a plane, every time that I've seen an aircraft, I have to watch that plane until it's past and it's gone.
Every day's a struggle. I miss laughing the way I used to.
As I walk to work every morning, the first thing I do is look at the skyline and see if all the tall buildings are standing. And then not walk by them.
I went to war, and I didn't ask to. Wasn't trained for it, you know? I wasn't prepared for it. And to be thrown into that, you know? That's tough to live with every day.
The lives of most of the World Trade Center survivors we met have returned to normal, as much as that is possible. Most of them are back at work and pursuing careers that were so horribly interrupted a year ago. After 8 operations, Ling Young is still working full-time on her recovery. Mary Jose has had 3 operations so far, as has Donna Spera, who has never set foot back in New York City. Fred Eichler's insurance business did not survive the destruction of that day, and he's still unemployed. Kelly Ryer is now married. His first child, a baby boy, is due at the end of November. The fire department captain, Jay Jonas, was promoted to battalion chief 5 days after the Trade Center disaster. Ron DiFrancesco tried to continue working in the shadow of Ground Zero this year, but he has recently moved with his family to Canada. Been a tough anniversary. We want to thank all those people who took the time to share their stories with us. It meant a great deal to us. Our coverage will continue.
ABC News 9/11 will continue.